Hello, welcome to my kitchen. I'm having a bit of fun this week because the weather's slightly improved. It prompted me to think about making a little bit more Comfrey balm because our supplies are now getting a bit low. So that's what's left. Now, Comfrey, very deep roots. I've tried on occasions to move it around my plot and gave up trying to dig it up. It has this huge taproot. It goes down feet, and because of that it draws up nutrients and minerals from the soil, and that's why it has all these huge properties. So this is the comfrey that I grew on my allotment last year. Comfrey is a plant that dies down at the end of the summer and then comes back up the next year. So these are just these I picked when it was a hot, dry day, and I dried them in a big envelope in my polytunnel with the doors open. Keep it out of the sun, but to keep it aired and dry. And I'm very pleased with how it's kept. It's not gone at all musty or mouldy. It still smells. It's very distinctive smell, comfrey. It's not exactly pleasant, but it's distinctive sort of herby, pungent smell. You might want to use gloves. It's got little spikes on it even when it's dry. So I just blitzed that up in my blender to a fine powder. So I blitzed up everything that was in that jar and that bag, and it's sort of powdered down to about, I'd say, a generous cupful. And I put that into my crock pot, electric slow cooker, without it switched on. Put that in first. Now you can see a few lumps there, a few big pieces, which it's all going to be strained, so you won't see those in the final product. I added the next ingredients to a pan, and the first of these is 2 cups of organic raw coconut oil. So that's my 1 cup measure there. I'm not measuring it incredibly accurately, but it is approximately 2 cups full. I'll link to a YouTuber that I followed to make this recipe. He actually adds another herb to this balm, and he also calls it a salve. They're all pretty much the same kind of meaning. He also adds some dried lemon balm, and I didn't happen to have any of that, so mine is all comfrey. And because I wanted to use up all of the comfrey that I had from last year, I added all that you see there, which was about a generous cupful. If you're going to steep a herb in oil like this, the herb needs to be completely dried because you don't want anything wet added to the oil because you'll end up with a rancid, mouldy mixture. It must be a very, very dried out, dry powder. So the next ingredient was extra virgin olive oil. I added 4 cups. I did have a little bit of avocado oil as well to use up, so it's a mixture of the two. So you can use either or a mixture. The next ingredient is about a cup of shea butter. Now that pot I've got there is about an 8.5 ounce pot. It was a bit more than a cup. And because I didn't want to just leave a tiny bit in the pot to go sort of rancid, I actually put that in as well. I wasn't using the crock pot. I would be putting these in a double boiler, i.e. I would have water in the pan and a big bowl on top and be putting it in there. I'm going to be putting my crock pot on really low and sort of steeping the powdered herb in the oils and fats very slowly. So I'm just warming these up first to melt them. So on a really low heat, and I'm standing over it. And as soon as the coconut oil and the shea butter have melted, I'll be taking it off the heat. once I'd stirred it up to combine the ingredients, I put the lid on and switched it to warm, and I left it on that for 24 hours. Obviously, you're going to have to use instructions on your own crock pot, whichever temperature on yours is for just keeping something warm, so very low indeed. Then I left it on overnight. I added 5 ounces of beeswax pellets, and this is what sets the oil into a salve or balm. Now, you can see that I've added them to the crock pot, and that was a mistake. I should have strained it first and then added them. There's generally enough heat in the oil to melt it. I use beeswax pellets to melt them if you stir it round without having to put it back on the stove. But the reason I'm doing this rather quickly is because I realised that I should have strained the mixture first to get all of the powdered herb out, and that wasn't going to go quite so well um, if I hadn't strained it first, and the beeswax had sort of started to clump together. So I ended up making a complete mess, which you'll see. But just to clarify that the next step, the next day, is to strain it, then add about 5 ounces of beeswax pellets to set the mixture. While you're watching me making a complete mess of my kitchen, these are the pots I used. They're brown glass pots, and they're sold as 2 ounce. But there's one a bit bigger there, but they're sold as 2 ounce pots. And this quantity I've made is enough for about 16 of them. Now that's probably too much for most people. In fact, it's too much for me. So the ingredient list I've given, which I will detail in the description, you can halve it or quarter it. So just a word about what you can use this salve for. People use it for things like aches and pains and bruises, and I've used it for that myself, and I wouldn't now want to be without it. Please pay attention to the warning that I've put at the beginning of this video and also in the description. You need to be absolutely sure that you're using the right ingredients. You need to make sure that you've identified this plant correctly, and that you don't have any contraindications for not using it. I'm not aware of any myself, but you need to do your own research and do your own checks to make sure that this is something safe for you to be rubbing on your body. As you can see, I made a complete mess of my kitchen, mainly because I was rushing so that it didn't set. Just a word about the amount of beeswax to use. You'll see in the next stage where I pour it in the jars, and you can see it starting to set. As soon as this mixture starts to cool down, it starts to set. You might find it's a personal thing. If you have this too runny, then it becomes too messy to use. If it's too stiff, too hard, it becomes like trying to sort of rub lip balm into your arm or something. And it's kind of a personal preference. So I can only suggest that a bit like jam, that you sort of do a trial set of it. I actually poured in the end a little bit into a little jar and put it in the fridge for a minute to see what it was going to be like when it had cooled. So if you're not sure how much beeswax to add, you could add the equivalent of, say, instead of 5, maybe 4 ounces. Or if you were, say, halving this mixture, you would need 2. If you were quartering it, you would add 1. And then just siphon off a little bit of the mixture before it cools down. Put it in the fridge or freezer for a few minutes or something and just see what it's like. And if you think it's going to be too runny and too messy, add perhaps another half an ounce. If you do need to add a little bit more, then you can do that by putting all of your mixture back into a pan or a double boiler and just warming it really, really gently and stirring until the additional beeswax pellets have melted.